We'll go ahead and get our meeting started. What I'd like to do is call our meeting to order and introduce our council members, commission members. We have, and I believe Shelley Naser will be here. I think she's just running late. She's typically on the far right side here, but next to her is Bob Hinkie, who is an alternate, one of our alternates, and actually our only alternate at this time. Next to him is Brian Marble, our vice chair. And typically to my left, my name is Michael Fortune. I am the chairman for the Planning Commission. Typically to my left is Tyler Riggs. But I'd like to announce tonight that Tyler, because of work and commitments, has had to step away from the Planning Commission effective immediately. So we wish him well. He always brought a great perspective to our commission and to the things we were involved in and the work that we were doing. He was great and always actively involved in everything. And so I appreciate that and extend a vote of thanks for him. That means that the gentleman next to me here, Bob Washburn, who has been an alternate, will now serve as a full-time voting member on the Planning Commission. So I welcome Bob Washburn. Thank you. And next to him is Joe Chambers. Appreciate and welcome him to it. I would invite all of you to join us, if you would, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I've asked Joe Chambers if he would lead us tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on with our activities and our schedule here, our agenda. I would also like to recognize Bob Hinkie, that until Shelley would show up, that we would be voting with participating with us that way. Okay, let's take our first item here of the approval of the minutes from before. So if we can, if anybody has any comments about those, I'm going to ask Bob Washburn if you'll kind of lead us in this as we go, and I can get this pulled up over here.
We don't need to discuss the ones that have been updated. Is that correct?
Tyler, do we need to? I think.
No, you guys should have the most updated ones from a couple.
And they were made public when with the new agenda. Okay. So the new minutes that were updated, there are just a couple other things that I found. One is on line 73. I wonder if the lines are the same, because this is my old copy. Sorry.
That's all right.
The Smethurst introduced themselves and talked with the commission. It just says talk with the commission. It felt like it needed to be talked, but that's my perspective. And then on row line 122, we talked about the stormwater master plan includes an easement for stormwater and a pond. I think that needs to be a retention pond, is what we've been talking about in the past. So I just inserted retention there. And
Where was that at?
line 122. Under item number 2, last meeting. The line numbers.
So the pond may actually be a detention or a retention pond, so either one of those might be different in that description. Are you set on retention?
No, we had talked about retention throughout the thing. I think that it was defined as retention, but
I just making sure that when we define that, to make sure that you we've defined either retention or detention because they're
Bob,
different ones, so.
I agree with you. It was retention.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, great.
Okay, and, I think that's all that I had, other than what was already corrected.
That's all that you have.
That's all that I had, yeah.
Did anybody else have any items? Or things that they found in the minutes from our last meeting that need to be brought to our attention? If nobody else has any comments or corrections, I'd entertain a motion to accept our minutes.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from our last meeting. September.
I'll second it, because I can.
27.
What was it? September 27th. Planning Commission.
Okay, I have a first from,
With the changes?
with the changes.
With the
With the
changes.
corrections, yeah.
So we have a first from Brian Marble to accept the minutes with the changes, and a second by Bob Hinkie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Okay. At this point in time.
Yeah, but these are just signing. These are, oh,
General
you do
comment.
have to.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Also, Tyler, do we have any emails, anything come in regards to public comments, general things?
I checked 5 minutes before I came in,
Nothing was there. Okay. No phone calls, anything like that. All right. We do have two individuals. I'd welcome you here, and I would invite Loretta Buckley. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If you'll come up to the microphone, the podium here, and we'd be happy to hear your comments.
My comments today, have to do with, I believe the changes to the subdivision amendments, and I would ask that Providence City, for those of us that are citizens that are either moving in or live or are looking to buy a lot that could be in a new development, that you have some kind of a requirement, law, whatever you can do, that provides notification to us as citizens of the city as to when developments are put in, like testing. So we know that everything was done in accordance to the either the preliminary or the construction design documents that the developers do, so that we know that those processes were followed, that there are standards that the city has followed through with them, and that we have some way of getting that information so we can approach developments in a informed manner, having all of the information in front of us.
Thank you. So that I understand your comments clearly, is when someone comes in for a proposed development,
Right.
that will get published in the agenda, which is made available to the public. And that is an item on the agenda coming up. And so that's really the first point, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding. And so then it would be at a meeting where some of that would be discussed, maybe something proposed, or they're just talking about the idea. And then as that moves forward, it's getting processed, and here's this whole list of things that have to happen. Which, from what, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying, I'd like to know what all those things are, and that the city has signed off on them. Is that correct?
Right, and
Okay.
then that all of those things that the city has signed off, that there's some way or a checklist that says, yep, this was done, these were provided, this is
Okay.
all given, right? So that the information isn't just lost or buried or misfiled or whatever.
Sure. So as we go through that process and it comes back before us, whether it's for a final approval or something that we're considering is being discussed on the agenda, it will show online that you could go online or get from the city a list of all these items, the things that were required of them, and it'll show the bullet points and all the detail. And it identifies whether they've been completed or not, or if it's still something pending. Is that correct? That's usually what we see, that these things are, so that if we give our approval, it's subject to these last few things being completed and done. But usually that detail of the status of that particular project, development, whatever it may be, big or small,
Okay,
we'll have those listed there. And it'll show whether it's been checked off. Now, if somebody, and that's public information, that can be done. If somebody wanted to know greater detail about the retention pond or the study that may have been required or whatever it was, how would they go about accessing that? I don't know that all of that information is accessible by a citizen of Providence.
I could do a records request.
So if somebody came in and said, I'd like to understand more, I have a question about the soil testing or things like that were done, they could come in and request that, and where you could then be able to release that information or it be online or emailed or something that you could study more. Is that what if I'm understanding right, that's what you're looking for?
well, yes, I'm looking for that, but I'm also looking for, was it done?
Okay,
Rather
That's where
than just
again,
saying,
yeah.
yeah,
that's where again, from our standpoint, the city has these requirements and the things the developer must do. When we get the report about it, it's identifying to us that these things have been completed.
who
So
identifies that they have been completed?
I would say city staff that processes all of that, the requirements of the developer and so forth.
So let me just make sure I have clarification on it as well. So what you get is during an application, we have certain requirements that they have to submit in order for approval of a preliminary or final plat in these
Right.
cases. And so at that point in the permitting process, you will have those things you're talking about, that they have certain things and whether they've achieved or not achieved. Now, my question for you is, once the plat is approved here, so as they build it, so if they build it to city standard,
Right,
are you asking about the construction? Or are you asking about the planning conditions upon,
no,
submitted for plan?
verifying the construction, that everything that
you're talking about
said
construction?
was in there was actually done.
So some things, we will check and have inspections done by our staff that will inspect to the city standard, like the connection of the sewer line connection, or the road is compacted. And there will be a letter at the end of completion of the minimum improvements. A letter will be issued to the developer, and that letter will indicate that the minimum improvements have been achieved. Now, we don't get into some outside of the public right of way. So if you're asking if a compaction test has been done on an individual house lot, that would be outside of kind of our inspection, because we're inspecting for minimum improvements in public right of ways. Yeah, and I'm just trying to make sure where you're at so that we can
Yeah.
define how to answer your question.
So you're saying you only do that 66-foot right away?
That's the
That-
public area of space that we're looking
Okay.
for the 66-foot right of way.
But you would have documentation that this was done, or, I mean, I don't
So
know.
on completion of that, on completion of a final or on a, minimum improvements, the inspection would go out and we would issue a letter because you can't start construction of the building lot without minimum improvements being completed. And so we would have an inspection, and that would be given to the developer that would say, okay, you have achieved the minimum improvements.
So,
That would be a letter, you could get a copy of that letter that would indicate that. But without that letter, they can't, the county won't issue a building permit without having minimum improvements being achieved.
okay,
That. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand which of the process. Now, if you're asking if you compact everything correctly on the lot, that's kind of a fire. That we're not involved in the ownership of dirt on a lot. We're concerned with public right of way so that it's maintained.
okay.
And then the county handles the building inspection and enforcement of
Right, yeah,
those
I know that
codes.
the county is the one that does the building
So,
inspections.
You know, all of those things. And
and
there's
stuff.
a variety of inspections set based on different parts being completed or prior to the next step being able to go forward. Those things are.
Okay,
Do you have anything as an example? that you would feel
well, so
comfortable
you're
with?
talking about right of way up on Sherwood Drive. North Sherwood Drive.
Okay.
You've got two areas along the curb and gutter that have collapsed, that have been repaired. One spot was repaired twice, even a bigger area. And it's already starting to show another collapse. There's already another hole forming.
Hmm.
Yeah, you know, in it. And so that's right away. That's showing that there's not compaction there along that curb and gutter. So it's the same spot now on the third.
Third time around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just little now, but that's how
Yeah.
they start, right?
Yeah.
You know?
And this,
Six-
And
these
then
couple of.
after the initial inspection, there would be a final inspection that would be after asphalt. And that's why they've been repaired, is they haven't passed the final inspection for us. We would have a final inspection and acceptance of the road. And in that process, there would be a final inspection letter given that says, okay, we'll accept the road now after it's been fixed. So if there's fixes, we generally will wait, and there's oftentimes the bond in place that will say, hey, developer, put up a bond, and once that bond is once that final inspection letter is approved, and we've accepted the road as a city road, because we don't accept the road until it passes final inspection. It's still owned by the developer until we take acceptance of it. And there would be that letter, if that's what you're looking for.
So, yeah, I'm just wondering, so where does it say, because I had that big 43-page code stuff and I couldn't see in there that Providence City only, when a new development is going in, that you only care about the right of way, that 66-foot right of way.
Well,
When they're doing a lot of earthwork.
there's a
Go ahead, you're doing fine.
there's a variety of things. Part of what I would say is to say, we only care about the right of way. I think we care about everything and every part of everything that goes on in Providence, because we're trying to do the best job that we can for the city and for the individuals where these projects are taking place. Now, there's certain individuals with specific responsibilities. As that developer, there may be soil testing that needs to be done, there are different things, all these different aspects of it. And so there's engineers that are required, there's bonds that are put up, as Ryan mentioned, and things like that. So there's kind of a step-by-step process in going through it. So
And the process,
Yeah.
the reason the process is there is to protect the city, which is all of us, but it's protect the city because the city has a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility that to make sure that the developer, whether they're developing bare ground or whether they're building, that they meet code, that they meet the code. And we live by the code. And tonight we have 2 code reviews. You know, code is really important to us. And so to meet that fiduciary responsibility, they require the bonds, they require engineering, wet stamps, sign offs by engineering. And so when that piece of land is done, there is a responsibility, the onus is now on the engineer's back. Was the land properly surveyed and was it laid out according to the plan? And there's sort of a guarantee by everybody that signed off on that. And so they are responsible to that. Now, to make the whole thing happen, that's when the city comes in and says, these are the checkboxes. You do all the checkboxes, they're all filled out. Good, we're done. But part of those checkboxes is that it was signed off by individuals, by responsible parties, that the work was done correctly, that the work was designed correctly, that the whole thing was done correctly, one step at a time.
So we have that documentation, that sign off that it was done for the road, the right of way.
Sure.
One step at a time?
We would,
I
we
was
would have
told-
inspections, and then on that inspection, there would be an issuance of a acceptance letter. So if we've accepted it, then we would have a letter that we accepted or not. And we have a period of time, a warranty period of time for the bond. So if we've accepted the road and it was inspected according to our standard, then we would have that letter issued to the developer, and at that point. So there isn't every view, but there are certain points in time that have records, like at minimum improvements before they can issue building permits. So a minimum improvement inspection letter of acceptance, and then a letter of final acceptance. But in between there, if we haven't accepted, there's probably not a documentation. There might be a documentation saying, hey, we need you to fix this, this, or this off of our inspection.
And is that public information? I mean, can we, as citizens, get?
Well, it's a draft, and we're doing the development draft usually isn't a public because it's draft, but the final letter is.
Okay.
That would be, so anyway.
Okay,
So
if
when you
there's
ask
specifics,
it-
get with us and we
Yeah,
work through some.
when you ask, I want to know that this was done and done to these standards. That's where those letters of acceptance, or that's the statement that basically it's making at that point. And those will happen along the process of it.
And keep in
Okay.
mind, it's as viewed. Is there a chance that something could fail later? I mean, it's like anything that's manufactured or built. We have a period of time to be able to view and inspect and say, okay, we have a 1-year warranty. And within that period of time, if there's any manufacturer defect or flaw or anything, we can have it fixed. But like any warranty, it's not forever. If there's some potential problem that doesn't surface until later, then that's a different issue. Because at some point, some of it based on a visual inspection of the timing that it's being done, and says, oh, well, if it all is accurate at this point in time, then that acceptance letter can be issued. But I mean, weather isn't perfect. We've seen water leaks now, and we see other. I mean, we're in a business of maintenance and progress, so I can promise that nothing is a 100% guarantee, but that letter is something that says, hey, we've inspected and we've reviewed, and at this point in time, based on inspection, it's like an audit, can't guarantee everything, but certainly we're trying to make sure that when we accept a road, it's built to city standards so that we can maintain it at that.
okay,
Does that help you?
yeah,
Bob had a comment too. Let's.
Yeah, I have a vested interest in this because I live up in that area myself, and I got a neighbor who in the last 2 years had to spend tens of thousands of dollars, well over $100,000 to lift the house and get it straightened out because it was sinking away. And so, and then this past year, Draper had a really great example of something that can happen. And everybody's pointing their finger at everybody else. And so as we're looking through the ordinances here, we're doing ordinance review. And I see inspections and things. I'm trying to think, well, what exactly are we inspecting, and what is the standard we're inspecting to? And does the public, do I as a citizen, before or after I buy my house, have the ability to understand if that property is at risk? Or is the standard, say, when we're filling in a hillside and making it so we can put houses on it, I believe there's some kind of a standard of, you put down a foot of fill, so you compact it, another foot, compact it, and there are inspections going on periodically to make sure that kind of thing happens. So, I don't know where is the line of liability when something fails on somebody's property and the house is down in the neighbor's backyard.
There's a case
And-
called Franson that talks about that. It has nothing to do with the Franson's here in Providence. It's you can find it by doing a keyword search for Franson. It's an opinion by Justice Durham, Chief Justice Durham at the time. She was now retired. She wrote an opinion on it. And to be honest with you, it doesn't give a whole lot of protection when you're buying from a contractor who's bought the lot from the developer. If you buy the lot from the developer to build the home, then the developer is liable for the compaction, but the failure to compact. But normally that's what a soils report is for.
So we're looking at the ordinances, and my question is there some way that we can make sure that the city's protected and that the citizens have an opportunity to understand what the situation is? So that it's not 5 or 10 years later, oh, buyer beware, you should have paid attention to that when you bought the house.
No,
It-
we can't do
So-
private
So that's,
stuff. State code is pretty clear that the city is involved in public improvements,
And-
public infrastructure improvements. When it comes to private improvements and building code, they do their best by the building code. They require the people that are coming in, even if the developer has graded the lots and supposedly compacted them to what they should be, oftentimes the building department, in fact, I would say more times than not, will require a soils analysis done. Make sure that they know where the native ground is, make sure what the compaction is. So that all comes with part of the building permit. That's after the city moves out of the business. That's part of the building permit. But state code talks quite a bit about public infrastructure. There's certain part of private infrastructure that we can make sure of, like we can make sure the water lines are cleaned and installed properly. The private ones that way, in private developments, and that the service lines are connected to our main line property. But when it comes to the home, that's the building inspection, and that's not, that runs under the building inspection rules, not,
so the state law kind of protects the
Subdivision.
city from anything that's not municipal.
well, there's two different rules. There's the subdivision development rules, and then there's the actual structural building permit rules. And when you're building the structure, most times that all falls under the building permit side of things. So
So those standards for compaction would be held at the county then, and they would do their inspections for building permits and stuff to determine if that's a safe place to build. The county is,
The county would inspect the foundation, the digging before they pour the foundation. The county takes care of, I mean, we've contracted with them. To take care of inspection of the construction. And again, because of testing, you test it at a periodic spot. Testing can't be perfect. Because if it's tested in one spot, maybe compaction is in the perfect spot of test, but maybe 10 feet difference. You know, it might vary. But in the process, we can't assure perfection in a flawed testing environment. Does that make sense? Even if we were doing it on private property, the testing, in the process of we're doing sample sizes and testing and.
right, but, so on the private property, for a subdevelopment, for a development is, there must be a standard.
There
Some-
is standards. There's the standards by the building code. And that's handled by the building inspectors and so forth, and all those steps along the way.
Okay, and that's
So-
not anything that we,
No, we
as a
don't,
planning commission, deal with, nor in our ordinances for the city.
and ours deals with the public properties and things like that. I would suggest a couple of things. I don't know, I hope that this has helped you. I hope that you understand there are steps along the way through the development part. There's really two aspects to it, whether it's 2-lot split or 36 housing subdivision. You have the development aspect for your roads, your utilities, those things. And there's check marks all along the way and things that have to be done. There's engineers that review everything. There's inspectors that inspect stuff. And engineers that stamp that this is correct and done right and the way it was supposed to. And there are public information reports that you can see and have that information, okay? The letters that were mentioned. The other thing that I might suggest is for the next step, and that is, okay, if everything, the roads are okay, we're ready to go in and start building now. How do I know that the lot's ready to go, that my foundation was all done? You might stop at the county because that's who we contract to and just say, I'm curious about this process and what part of public information is available to me or those types of things to see what you can see.
Yeah, I've already talked to Paul Bernston in the county, so I'm aware of that.
Okay.
So your process then, if we're just talking about the right of way, which is the road,
Public,
right? So that's the 66-foot right of way.
okay.
How or what part of that letter or notes or progress that you say is supposed to be there on inspection,
Mhm.
is that publicly available? Is there,
There's a request that can be made for a copy of the letters, that the letters state this was done and it's been accepted. Okay,
okay,
so there's what did we say?
It should be a minimum improvement letter. So that happens before the issuance of building permits. And then a final acceptance letter. Those are the two documents that would be public documents that you could view. And they should be,
so nothing along the way between the very, very start of it to the final, everything is correct, fine and done, and we're signing off on it, and here it is. There's nothing in there that says, or that follows the work for the public right away was done. There's nothing there that's available or any progress or weekly or,
not necessarily, I mean, we don't build the road.
well, no, I know, but you said that we inspected. You have, I just heard that there's engineers and,
There's engineers to design the road. But that would be a document by the builder, right? Because the builder would have the document of their engineered plans and sets. We have a standard that they have to approve to. They give us construction drawings. You could see construction drawings that they would tell what it should have been built to. I mean, that. would
right,
be-
no, I have all of that. I just want to know that the city oversaw for the road that we seem to have problems with up there. If that's all that, you know, the city is concerned about, is the road.
And it would have been inspected by our public works director and our engineer before acceptance and based on their.
But do they do any interim inspections or anything in the process of all of that before? You know, I mean, some of these take months to do. There's a lot of work. Is there anything that's, you know, hey, you know, today we went and did this, or they had, you know, this lift or this much? Nothing?
Not necessarily, no, not as a required. Would we have a daily report of progress construction? No, because we're not the construction manager of the project. That would be a
No, I understand you're not the
manager.
construction manager, but I just heard you say that we have inspectors. that
We
are
have
inspecting.
inspectors, just like when they go to accept at this point or prior to final, they've gone and looked at it.
So
and
nothing from the
inspected.
start until just final, when it's in and done and the road is there, that right away is done. There's no inspections.
We will have SWIP inspections, and some other, various reviews of maybe, the process. I don't know how the SWIP inspection would have been recorded in that, but so those are the two step.
Yeah, I know it's what they're,
Yeah, those are the two,
yeah.
those are the two step ones that would have an official documented inspection at the time of minimum improvements and final
And final,
acceptance.
okay.
Those are the two official records that would show that we viewed and we made a decision whether it's accepted, not accepted.
So nothing along the way from,
No, but the contractor's got, along the way, the contractor's got a reputation, he's got bonds, he's got insurance. He wants to keep that up, and so he's got a personal, they've got a business responsibility to make sure that thing is done right. If they don't, there's a, you know, so they've got a whole staff of people that are making sure that it's done right. And they've got a process where they're signing off. This has been done, great, we can move on to this, and we can move on to this, move on to this. Is it public knowledge? No, but if it's not done right, they don't get an acceptance letter.
okay, all right.
And they have their bond and money tied up until it is accepted, until it is corrected. And so maybe one of the other things lastly to mention to you is maybe to talk to the Public Works Director for the city of Providence and just understand what he's doing, how something like that is taking place. Now, this problem that's up there on Sherwood Drive. This is just recent. Is that correct, that you say it's starting?
In the
to fail
last
again or
year,
Okay.
probably.
Summer? Okay, so anyway, maybe that's a good thing to take up and just ask him about that
Okay,
and see.
yeah, I've already talked to him, so,
Okay,
okay, all right, thank
all
you.
right, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope we helped you in some way. All right. I had a gentleman come in. We already took the sign-up sheet. Did you have something that you wanted to speak about? I have somebody ahead of you, but,
Anyway.
okay. Next, we have Kendall Pace that would like to make public comment.
Kendall Pace, I think I just checked the box incorrectly.
That's okay.
More of a sign-in sheet, but
Yeah,
I'm here I just want to listen to the code review a little bit and, you know, I guess I have a question. You have a anticipated date that you'll have the review completed?
right at this point, no, we would like to get it wrapped up, but we've got to make sure we address everything as best we can, and then we move on from.
You're not anticipating tonight having it
No.
wrapped up? Okay, I want a little more time to study it myself,
Yeah.
so. Okay, that's it.
Thank you
I
very much.
appreciate everything you do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, young man, if you'll state your name and so forth.
Heavy on the,
If you'll do it at the microphone, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Claire Hibbert's my name.
Claire Hibbert.
I know a few of you here. I've talked to Scarlett and Ryan. I live on,
And we know you.
yeah, I know you live on this hill. Me and him are ski buddies. Old man ski buddies. Anyway, I live on 3rd East, 3rd North in Providence.
Okay,
You're well aware of, as you get to the end of 3rd East, there's kind of a T in the jog in the road there. And And there's a landmark that sits right off to the side there,
Okay,
kind of a nice one. To put it bluntly,
the landmark is,
that's an old house,
okay,
it's an abandoned house on 30th.
can we pull that up on the screen? I can't, just so that it can help me,
Anyway, I live down the road from, I have property behind it.
okay?
I hit Scarlett up about it, I hit Ryan up about it.
We own the property he's talking about.
The city does, or,
So if you'll see this piece of property right here,
okay,
there's a abandoned house, uninhabited house.
Abandoned.
And my understanding is that the property was purchased for the building of a potential roundabout
Mhm.
or correction of the intersection. And at this point, that's what the property is being held for, is at some point, 3rd East and 2nd North here. The road, because it's misaligned, will at some point in the process of aligning, and so the property's been acquired for that purpose.
okay,
Anyway, back 20 years ago, I had a chance to buy the corner. My cousin owned the property, Jay Interconnect. And at the time, all it was as good for was a building lot, which I didn't really want at the time. But he owned a little bit of property behind it. And he drew the line right down the fence. There's a fence line that
mhm,
it's everybody's backyard there. I got like 20 feet of easement there. And that easement goes right down up the middle of that old garage that sits there. So I own part of the garage. Part of that's on my property, part of that's on the city property.
okay,
Well, I hit Ryan up about, I would demo it, tear it down, I'd haul off. I have a good sized mini excavator. I'm not really a rookie at doing
Yeah.
this. I've probably got 200 demolitions underneath my belt in my career with Graham Johnson. So I'm
Right.
not a rookie. It would entail having the house inspected for asbestos,
right,
demolition permit, which is probably $1,000 or something.
and you're wanting to tear it down
Yeah.
for the purpose of just,
So I could get enough property so I can keep that garage. I need about
oh, I see.
30 feet of property.
So you'd like to do something where you'll tear down the house, clear all that off,
Yeah.
make a lot line adjustment to
Yeah.
get the garage all on your side.
You know, I got a dump trailer, I can haul my dump trailer.
We don't,
We don't.
What's that?
We don't have jurisdiction over any of that. We're just the planning commission. We're not the city council.
You're not planners?
well, we're the planners, but we're not the council. So that's where,
I got the wrong, I'm sorry. Hey,
it's okay.
you guys
I'm not
took
being
it.
rude. I'm just trying to make sure we get to the right body.
Yes, wrong body. The issue becomes with property is an educational item. If we are to determine a property, we can't, we don't barter and we don't do side deals. If the property is to be determined to be excess, we would have to open that up for all to be able to have an opportunity. So at this point, the offer, while nice and great and probably in the best interest of both parties, there is a fairly substantial number of process to go through in order to determine a process to be excess. And for that property to be excess and then listed for public auction and doing, there's more work involved. And at this point, I think we've said, go ahead and use the garage.
Yeah.
We don't know how much of the property we'll need for the road. It hasn't been designed, hasn't been determined what that will be, whether it cuts through. We'd hate to cut off more property than the potential need. Certainly, being able to take out the building, that's a great one. If the building weren't attached to the moving of the lot, certainly.
I want to make a proposition to you now.
So anyway, that's kind of there's more to the piece of the
Yeah.
puzzle.
I don't really care about the property. Give me a 20-year lease.
We can't consider any of that. I appreciate your position, but it's the city council really who you should be talking to about it.
Well, you guys here now.
Come in too many tools too, we could talk
You know,
about at least possibly.
Rick
That's
Olson.
that's something different than property,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's something we could maybe talk about.
You know Rick Olson? He has the containers. The dump containers,
Lives on.
he set on side,
West. I don't think you know him as a contractor.
that'd be the perfect way to get rid of it, you could haul it. 15 yards in that thing, I think they don't really charge that much, probably $250 a trip. I will come talk to you.
Why don't you come talk? Let's, if you're creative, let's find maybe something that works within what we can do and not ties up for the future of when that road may or may not change the way it
You know,
is.
if you're worried about the liability. I'm a former snowplow driver for Providence City. I got 48 years on my belt with Johnson's. Put me on the payroll for 50 cents an hour or something.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
That's on the
Appreciate
record, 50 cents an hour for snow plowing.
I guarantee you the neighborhood would be excited if it's done.
Thank you, Mr. Hibbert.
So I said the wrong week there.
You're okay.
Let's see.
All right. Appreciate that. If there's no other comments, no calls, no emails that have come in, we will go ahead and close the public comment portion of the meeting. We will move on to public hearings, which we have none. We have no legislative action items and we have no administrative action items. We will go ahead and move on to our study items. And item number 1 is the review of our accessory dwelling unit ordinance revisions. The Providence City Planning Commission will review and discuss revisions to the city's ADU code. So, Scarlett, do you want to come up and bring us up to date or anything? We've pretty much looked through it. Should we just start talking about it?
So I'm gonna ask if it's okay if I come up and sit at that mic,
Absolutely.
so I can take notes while you're talking
Sure.
like I did the last time.
Sounds fantastic. I hope everybody has had a chance to look at this. We've moved forward with our initial review of things. We've moved forward with the correction, well, not corrections, but a review and the comments of Scarlett and the staff. And then it was put out to all of us to give an opportunity. I think that, I know that there were those who called in, talked with Scarlett, got some questions answered, things like that. We also have on here our color coding that was very helpful. Black is the current code that we have, except for the numbering system. Red is the proposed content that had been developed by Scarlett.
By staff, okay.
Yeah, by staff. And blue is Bob Washburn's comments. And green is Brian Marble's points of discussion and things of that nature. So,
There are blue comments in here that are links that we should, so these are links
okay,
to other.
Some of the blue ones are.
Right, so they're not on.
The hyperlinks are not.
yeah,
They
once
don't
we,
belong to Bob.
once we
Bob
get,
isn't on the hyperlinks.
once we get below, let's go down to PCC 1-3-2 definitions. It's where we first have some of it. We have accessory apartment unit. And initially it says an AAU means a second dwelling unit, which is a self-contained dwelling unit located within a single family dwelling unit, but has a separate entrance. It is a separate housekeeping unit that can be isolated within the original dwelling unit. An AAU maintains complete independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation, including a separate kitchen. Now, Bob makes a comment here about adding in the statement of renting or leasing for greater than 30 days. My concern is, are we looking that we only want monthly rentals at least, that it has to be at least a
Well,
month?
So my first concern is that an AAU or an accessory apartment unit is an internal
right,
It's a finished basement that has a separate entrance.
right,
And if it has a kitchen, it has a bathroom, it has sleeping quarters, then it is by this definition, an AAU, right? Or
right,
accessory apartment unit. Which I don't believe it is unless you're using it as a rental. Is what I would like to say that makes more sense to me that it's not an accessory dwelling apartment. Doesn't have to be recorded with the county as being an accessory apartment. And you're not gonna get fined if anybody finds out that you've got a finished basement because it's an accessory apartment and now it's illegal. It's not illegal unless you're renting it to
Yeah.
somebody. And the definition that I found was that 30 days is the definition of it will become a rental unit or something after 30 days. It's gotta be 30 days.
okay,
Okay,
okay, so you're looking
So-
at having that statement in there
That
because of,
definition, I'd like
that
to,
would qualify
I
it
would
then.
like to clarify the definition of an internal
Apartment,
apartment as that needs to be recorded with the county and all the things that it says here. It doesn't become one unless you're gonna rent it to somebody who's not a member of your family. Or these other parts of the definition about blood relative or adoption or trust or the family trust. So
okay,
which are defined elsewhere. And I just grabbed those and put them in here because it seemed like that would make sense. So those are the full comments. I just want to have it defined because I have a basement. It has a door, separate access. I have a bathroom, I have a kitchen, I have 3 bedrooms.
can it be isolated within the original unit?
Sure.
So you have access from outside
I have
into it,
access from outside.
and you
I
have,
can close the access to the stairway.
so you could do that, if you have it or you don't, that
Yeah.
could be done, but
And so my
But it becomes-
intent in finishing the basement that way is if my grandkids want to come go to Utah State, then I'd like to have them,
Yeah.
have a place to live.
So if it's family and all of that, it's not, even if you're charging them,
Right, that
it's not really,
considered-
would we consider that an accessory apartment
If you're
unit?
charging rent, yes.
If they're not charging rent,
If it's just the family that's living there and they're using the house, then that's fine. But if they're charging rent, if it's an actual
yeah,
apartment, then yeah, that
Okay.
would be an accessory apartment.
okay. And we believe there's a fair amount of those
There
in
probably
Providence.
is.
I know there are in my neighborhood. And so, what we're looking at, one of our objectives is to be able to have people come forward and identify those. Because the state wants us to have more of those types of situations to help offset the housing demand and affordability to some degree. So if that's the case, if we are renting it, whether it's to family or individual, completely separate individuals from the family, they would need to get a business license,
No, not a business license.
a landlord license.
No.
No, nothing?
Nothing for that way, but if it is going to be used as, now, if it's going to be used under the single family definition,
Okay,
which is I can't remember it, but I'll paraphrase to
Sure.
a degree. The person that owns the property plus anybody that's related to them within a certain distance.
yeah,
So if it's gonna be, if it's gonna be used as a single family, but part of that definition also says is that they use the house like a family. It's not separate units, it's a
Okay.
family house. Then then that's fine. That's a house being used for a single family, and there might be 15 people in the single family,
Right.
but there's single family. And we don't have them get a business license or anything like that.
And they're not charging anybody rent.
No, but if they truly separate the house up.
If
and
they lock the
truly-
door
And
inside.
they truly intend to rent that
Yeah.
as a separate unit. Then that's different. We still don't make them get a at least at this point, we don't make them get a business license. We do, state code does require, and so we require, because state code says to require. We do require that they do an because we want one of them owner occupied.
Right,
So because we want one owner occupied, we require that they file an affidavit that with the county against the property that says that one of the units needs to be owner occupied. And then we also give some leeway on who the owner is. That could be a blood relative and whatnot that lives in the top thing, and then they can rent it out to a completely unrelated party in the other unit. So,
so now, let's say I close that off. I lock the door from the inside. So it's completely separate. And I'm renting it as Airbnb. I'm not renting it to family members or things like that, but I'm renting it as Airbnb. And that's anywhere from 1 day, 3 days, 10 days, 2 weeks. What am I required to do?
well, if you're using any part of your house, whether it's your whole house or a part of your house as an Airbnb, you should come and get a conditional use permit and a business license. And that's where Bob's 30 days comes in. Because anything under 30 days is considered a short-term rental, which is, I mean, Airbnb is like, instead of people saying facial tissues, a lot of people say Kleenex. Kleenex
Yeah.
is a brand name. Airbnb is a brand name.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so the term is short-term rental. If you're using it as a short-term rental, it doesn't necessarily have to be a second dwelling unit. You can use your whole house as a short-term rental as long as you live there most of the time. But if you go for a month and you want to short-term rental your house for a month, you can do that as long as you come in and get a conditional use, which is a one-time permit, and then a business license, which you have to renew annually. And we do have you, because you sign up as a business, part of that is we updated our code a few months ago so that we can collect sales tax, isn't it the restaurant? Not the restaurant tax,
Transient room tax.
transient room tax.
Okay.
So they're different. They're two different things. A short-term rental is different than a long-term accessory dwelling unit rental.
Okay,
So short term has nothing really to do with AAUs, does it?
Not really.
Okay.
accessory apartment.
I mean, you
So-
could use that part of your house as the short-term rental if we allow it.
But you don't
But-
have to separate it. You could share the bathrooms and kitchen and all that stuff.
If you're short-term,
Yeah.
yes. But if you're going to actually do an accessory apartment unit for somebody to come and rent long-term, then you have to make sure that you meet the certain building code requirements, and then you also need to file that affidavit with the county that says that one of the units will be owner occupied.
Okay,
I'm sorry, what if it's a whole house that is just bought and used as a Airbnb?
You have a question.
you'll have to come up to the microphone and state your name again. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Well, I'm not sorry. I
No, no,
invite you
it's
to
just-
come and,
Scarlett.
yeah,
Loretta Buckley, Providence. So what if a home is bought and just used as an Airbnb?
We don't allow that at this point in time. We require that the home be owner occupied. You can Airbnb it, but the home has to be owner occupied. So somebody can Airbnb it on the weekends, they can Airbnb a part of it, they can,
But I know, I have a neighbor that has her own home that she lives in, and she bought another one. I live in the condos. And it is Airbnb, 100%.
Well, they shouldn't do that in Providence
So are you,
without getting a conditional
Yeah.
use.
What was that name and address?
They can,
We'll
now,
send the sheriff
No.
over.
they can
No.
do it. They just need to, well,
Yeah.
no, actually, they
they
can't.
really can't do it
They can't
because
do
it's
it
not,
because it has to
it's
be
not owner
owner
occupied at all.
It's.
At least at this point in time.
So,
That's
Okay.
the next
Okay.
ordinance.
all right.
I'm sorry, we're talking about the whole building, complete dwelling unit being
The
rented.
complete dwelling unit
That's-
is
That's
listed.
really the only way Airbnb's, or I'm sorry, I use Airbnb quite often. That's the only way that I will rent them anymore since COVID. And so that's, if you talk about short-term rentals, it's pretty much the whole unit,
Right,
whether it's an apartment, a condo, a house.
For that short period of time, but not for the entire year.
I have to tell you though, I handled an eviction where a young college kid Airbnb out, and he did Airbnb, it was Airbnb. I'm not using the Kleenex tissue analogy. One bedroom in his house. And it was during COVID, he couldn't get the damn kid out afterwards. And
because you couldn't evict people. Was
No,
that
no.
what was part of it because of that?
no, that didn't come into effect at the time, but the guy just wouldn't leave. I don't know why you do that, but
Yeah,
it cost him
Anyway,
about
the way our
$3,000.
ordinance is right now is there are some communities that do allow that, but Providence's ordinance is not set up to do that right now.
Unless it's owner occupied.
Unless it's owner
Okay.
occupied. So
So there is an ordinance in Providence that says you cannot do that?
we call it bed and breakfast residential. And it says that it has to be owner occupied. You can rent out rooms or a portion of the house, but it has to be owner occupied.
So
If
if
you want to
we own-
convert it to a bed and breakfast inn, then you have to have 5 rooms and you have to provide breakfast. And there's supposed to be a property manager there all the time. So,
if you're making it into an inn,
yeah, like a,
Short-term rental.
So if a person just owned that, then they could say, well, I went and stayed there one night this month, so I'm owner occupied, even though I own my own home and I live in it.
no, they have to prove well, through voting records and things like that, that that's their primary
Okay.
place of residence.
Because this person bought it from another person who did it and made so much money on the Airbnb rentals. And then those people left, and so this one bought off of them to do the same thing. And I just find it's hard in our community to have that constant churn and burn, right?
well,
That's why
we're
we
trying
do
to clean up this and clarify things for what we want and what we want, what the city wants to allow. And clean it up and clarify it. So we want people to be able to come forward and not worry about getting in trouble or massive property tax increases, things like that. So we want to know how many homes we have that meet these things. And we also want to clarify how
You
people
would
can.
be shocked if you went on to some of those websites and just put in dates and things
Yeah.
to see in Providence. There are
Can't use the
Probably.
website
hundreds.
The state code prohibits us from using the websites to,
for code enforcement.
For code
So then
enforcement.
you rely on us to do that and send in an anonymous.
Yes.
Yes,
yeah,
It gets to the compliant officer acts.
okay.
We have a compliant officer assigned and say,
Okay,
Let's, thank you. Let's go on. I guess the one thing I have here that I'm not understanding, and maybe that's just me. That we're looking to change where it says an accessory apartment unit means renting or leasing for more than 30 days.
That's a point of personal privilege. So just as a reference point, when you're using the term accessory apartment unit, that's really an internal accessory dwelling unit.
yes.
and that term is, well, both terms are used.
Yeah,
There is a little confusion as I went.
Changing
Yeah,
it
the
in
reason
the
I'm
rest of the documents, right?
Well, that's the concern I have is I see ADU used as a generic term. And we're using a very specific one. And I just think it needs to have some consistency added to it.
So can we define the different types right here and right now?
We actually just need to change instead of saying accessory apartment
Apartment unit.
unit under 10-3-2, we need to say internal accessory dwelling unit and change it to an ADU right there.
Well, because an ADU can be, this is a good discussion, so if I'm interrupting someone, I
No.
apologize.
No, that's what this is all about.
But an accessory dwelling unit can be an external one or an internal one.
Mhm.
And when you
Attached
talk
or
about an
detached, yeah.
ADU, it sort of encompasses both.
Right.
So,
Yeah, but we're, in the code we've seen so far, and I'm not saying it's right, is that we have split the idea, we've split the two ideas apart. One's an internal and one is not an internal, one is a separate dwelling,
Separate buildings.
separate building. And that's the way the code's written. If we want to start changing things like that, we need to go right back to, verse 1, chapter 1.
Part of the
And I'm
reason-
not against it.
Part of the reason is that state code, not every city has to allow external ADUs. We call them detached, but
yeah,
not every city has to allow those. Most cities have to allow internal apartment dwelling units. So.
I think the state ordinance says
Yeah,
that
the state. code.
internal has to, everybody has to allow it. But the external, attached or detached, the state did not require that all of that those had to be allowed.
No,
But,
just the internal ones.
okay,
And I apologize.
I would note that the definitions one, it wasn't changed in here. But when we get down
Yeah.
farther down in the 10-12-3, it is being changed to that.
Right.
So in the
Yeah.
definition, it just needs to change.
Just change it in the definition. yeah.
internal accessory dwelling units, IADUs, I like that,
And
okay.
it looks like I copied, this, number 1, number 2 with ADU and didn't change the ADU to AAU.
Yeah, it's okay.
So.
I should have caught it
Okay.
too, and I didn't.
So we've got IADUs, we've got ADUs, and then we've got accessory dwellings,
Accessory buildings,
accessory buildings. Okay.
accessory buildings, right.
And those are the three items, at least so far, that are
Accessory.
that are covered. in-
It's actually 4.
What's the fourth one?
We added accessory structures. Because we're getting a lot of confusion with a building
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and a swimming pool. And people will say, well, it says accessory buildings, a swimming pool's not a building, and we don't really have a good definition to say, yeah, you still need a permit. So we're putting that in there so that we can clarify some of that confusion.
And then there was one more, and that's an accessory building, small.
Yes,
So that's a whole nother.
yes, but we have had that one for a while.
Oh, I'm just saying, this, we're up against 5 different structure types here, use types.
So my purpose in addressing this is so that, people with the basement aren't in violation of anything unless they start to rent it. And then they need to go to the county and do their affidavit. And then they're good, right? But
Right,
the other part of that is that if somebody after a year from the ordinance acceptance, then it's an illegal ADU and they're gonna be penalized. So as soon as you go to the county and say, hey, I wanna do this, they shouldn't be penalized if they're doing that in preparation for operating as a rental. And that's what I'm trying to address here with number 2. on the bottom. Okay.
I
Any comments?
totally get that. I think it makes sense, honestly.
I had one thing that came to me as I walked out the hallway.
Not in the restroom, but.
No, before I got there. My comment was, do we need to address the issue of people being able to or clarify that if people have a perfect example as a townhouse over here that's being used strictly as a Airbnb. The
Short-term rental.
owner is not there, doesn't live in it, just rents it out. Now, from our existing code,
not
it's
one.
just a house rental. It's just a rental unit.
If they're renting it 30 days or more, then it's a rental unit, but if you're renting.
If it's shorter periods, it's not. So this ordinance has been used in other municipalities too, the southern Utah's, where I've seen it the most. But, so are we saying we don't want a resident to be short-term rentals or Airbnb?
I
Because
don't know
they're-
what we want, right,
Yeah.
on short-term rentals, because right now we're talking about accessory dwelling units.
Yeah,
And we'll go to the short-term rental
okay.
ordinance in a.
Somewhere down.
So have a sentence in there in this that just says, anything less than 30 days rental is considered to be underneath this ordinance and is not governed by the ADU ordinance.
That might be a good thing to put, that probably is.
I propose we put that in. And not wait for the new code
Yeah.
to come out.
I think it just makes it very clear.
Well, and it's critical right now
Yeah, yeah.
to the rest of our discussion.
Okay, I like that.
Chairman, I'd like to back up one step.
Sure.
Okay, we've got an enforcement issue here. Have we ever enforced anything to do with ADUs? IADUs? Short-term rentals? Have we ever inspected and enforced?
When we know about them, we have
How many in the last year or two?
probably none in the last year, because people are not reporting. It's very difficult when somebody says, I know they're renting their basement out. And we try and find out that they're renting their basement out, and they say, no, that's my cousin John,
Yeah,
and
Yep.
we don't say, well, show us birth certificates. We don't get that far. We do send them a notice that says, we've received information that you may be in violation of our zoning code. But if they choose to tell us that they're related to them, we don't push too much further at this point.
Okay, so if there's no enforcement, I suggest that this whole exercise is of no worth.
Well, is there any city that can enforce it?
There's somebody in Providence, I've got a friend in Providence that used to enforce it for Logan City. It takes them quite a bit of time.
yeah.
It takes the police officer and the compliance officer to do it. The question is it worth that?
Loretta Buckley, Providence.
Uh,
So you just mentioned Logan, so my parents lived up by the golf course, and they're in a special district where you can only have 3 non-related people in it. When my mother died, she wouldn't let any of us, okay. We sold the home. The family said they were going to live in it. They did not. They turned it into 2 apartments. I drove by just to see how everything was looking, saw one of the tenants and just struck up a conversation with her. She was there with her children, and I said, oh, this is a lovely house. And she said, yes. And I said, I know, I grew up here. You know, and she freely gave me all the information. 2 families living in there, more than 3. I went straight down to Logan City. I had to fill out a whole form and everything. It was horrible. You know, like I'm signing my life away and everything, but I did it. They went in and enforced it, and they made them move one of the families out. It can only be 3 that's in that, because the neighborhoods have been destroyed by college students. Now, I talked to the neighbors on both sides that I've known for years. My mom lived there for 70, almost a long time. And they said, yeah, we knew about it. And I said, well, why aren't you, they're bringing down your property values. The yard is dead. The trees have all died. Everything died. He said, yeah, I mowed the lawn for them. These women don't take care of it at all. We've taken care of it. I said, tell me, I'll go in. I've been through it once, but it was a horrible process. I mean, they looked at me like I was something evil by wanting to have them enforce the ordinances that the city had. But they did do it. So they did have an enforcement.
Yeah,
We've done it when when we know for a fact that the person is not related and that they truly are renting them. We tell people you have to evict them or go through the process. So
Right. And they did.
Yeah,
But they enforced it because you reported it. How did it exist before it was reported?
Years.
That's the point. There, so you know somebody who was.
I didn't know about it just until I happened to see him just talk.
And so you know somebody who has a townhouse in Providence who's renting it as an Airbnb or whatever. And the city doesn't know about it, so they can't enforce it. That's the key. And how do you do that? I don't know.
And I just looked it up and it's 177 a night if I wanted to start renting on this 23rd of October, so. And there's like a half a dozen right now.
and that's why
listed
people are doing
in
it.
Providence.
You're making a lot of money.
Just saying, there's, you know,
I don't know.
No, I
everybody-
agree. I
Yeah.
just, Brian brought up the enforcement. I'm just saying, how do you enforce it? If you don't know about it? And how do you find out about it? Except for from people who report it. I don't know how you do that.
You encourage the reporting. The only way that this works is that you encourage the neighbors to squeal on each other. Okay, that's true. And that has moral responsibilities. Should we be creating laws that encourage our citizens to squeal on each other? I'm not sure we should be creating. That's why I backed up.
Yeah,
It's a neighborhood. What do they call it? Neighborhood,
Neighborhood watch.
neighborhood watch. Let's call it not squealing, but it's a neighborhood watch. It's how it is how we can know on a lot of those. We get complaints and we can respond to those. But would you really want us to do the alternative and go and inspect and randomly select each house and determine if they're in compliance? I mean, the alternative,
I'm just saying if we can't enforce it, there should be no penalties. I'm saying that's what, we're having this discussion here. I'm just saying, if we can enforce it, should we, why are we creating code? Why are we changing the code? Why are we not eliminating a lot of this code?
well, first off, as I've seen codes develop, they're not perfect to begin with. You find out where the loopholes are, and over a period of 5-10 years, you refine it. But you gotta start somewhere, you know?
But you're trying to control something, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
the way the zoning laws work, Brian, are that if you don't have something that excludes it, it's deemed allowed. And so, you know, it's not the vice versa of that. Everything's permitted unless it's prohibited. You have to give, this process gives due process to the public as to what the zoning laws are. Otherwise, you know, my guess is that some of these Airbnb units are grandfathered in because they may pre-exist the existing code.
yeah, there's probably, well,
You know, and so we've
Yeah.
got to start somewhere. I'm gonna change the subject because I'm gonna be leaving here in a minute because I've got another commitment. One of my comments on here is I don't like the reference to the International Residential Code.
okay,
Without a reference to the date on it. Because I was talking to a friend of mine who owns a number of apartment buildings, and his 3 brothers are contractors here. And they have heard that the International Residential Code is gonna be changed to have a zoning component to it that allows duplexes in a single family dwelling unit. And in a single family zoned area. Yeah, go ahead.
Internal ADU is a duplex. I mean, that's exactly what it is, right?
Well, yeah. But this is basically having a true duplex in it. And I'm wondering if a bunch of social engineers, for lack of a better phrase, are not going to get into the International Building Code, and all of a sudden we're adopting stuff by incorporating it by reference that we don't really know is in there. And so I would suggest we reference an international building code or an international residential code as of a certain date.
The only reason why the other side of that coin is that at that point, you'll watch the process of an amendment of a code. And every time the new version comes out, then you are happy to go through the adoption of the new code in order to update that. And maybe that's what you want, maybe it isn't, but just logistically, that is why a lot of cities have gone to simply adopting the current building code. That way they don't have to adopt it every time that it releases and changes. But if it's what you want, that's a different thing. I just want to give the other side of the coin.
If you,
Go ahead, no.
if you don't reference the code and never look at that international code, you don't know if it changes, do you?
Well, our building inspector has to take a certain number of CEUs on changes or
Every year.
whatever. It has to, they have a license that they have to maintain with education. I'm assuming, I'm not one of them, but I'm assuming that has to happen.
Joe, is there are we responsible to the international code?
It's in our code.
Well, let's get that out. Why should we be responsible?
That's the standard, that's the standard.
It's not the state,
The
it's not the
state,
federal.
the state has adopted the same, so we're following through it. It dominoes through. I don't know if the state has a date or not. I don't know that.
We could maybe say this building code adopted by the state of Utah at such and such a date, because there was a time when the state of Utah used the uniform building code instead of the international residential code. They used the uniform residential building code or something like that. It was a different term, different code.
Well, my understanding is the uniform building code applied to anything that was under 5,000 square feet.
Maybe,
Anything greater than 5,000, you were commercial code.
Yeah.
You went to the uniform commercial code.
anyway, so the state changed, and then everybody had to, as Ryan said, everybody had to update all of their codes to be consistent with what the state changed. So we could, instead of calling out IRC, we could say the state adopted building code as amended or adopted in whatever time.
The problem is, another problem with setting a date is that then let's say your inspectors are keeping up to the current code, but your code is frozen in time, then at some point, the farther away they get from that period, and I get yours, I totally get that one. I hadn't heard that, but I totally get the worry of that. I totally valid. But the issue is then, let's say you freeze your code in time and you have more codes, then what happens in that? And are you inspecting to a wrong standard? Or have you approved to a wrong standard? Because now your building inspector is approving to a current standard and yours is a dated standard, or, I mean, those are the pieces of the puzzle to throw out along with it. But your point's very valid, because if they get into that, then
This is something, because we've gone half a paragraph. And,
Oh, we've gone backwards.
yeah.
And I have to go back one more.
Yeah. So, man,
Let me bring up another point here, and we may just want to end this and think it all over again. The overall goal of the chapter, okay, this is Providence General Plan 2020. This is the first page
right?
of the review tonight. State code requires a general plan to include a moderate income housing plan. First line in there, overall goal for the chapter. Planning housing opportunities for all people, regardless of income level, while maintaining the aesthetic qualities and public service levels Providence residents currently enjoy. Improve access to housing opportunities for low and moderate income residents. And I don't think we can go on until we define what is a low or a moderate income resident.
That's actually defined by federal code.
Mhm.
Okay,
It's a percentage of the, I mean, I think moderate is 85%,
and
less than 85% of the median income or something like that. And then there's grades down
And then-
below that.
the low income is 60%. Okay,
Don't know.
and the next one up is 85%. Okay, so we take the median, give 65% of it. You look at what that income dictates, that's how much money they're making. We cannot dictate, we cannot set code for those people, for opportunities for those people. We do not have housing in this city. We don't have the possibility of housing for those in this city because of market conditions and because the citizens do not want it. They do not want to take and cater to people that are making that kind of money. Potential residents. Why are we doing this whole exercise?
Because the state code requires us to.
Okay,
The state code requires that we encourage that type of
Yeah.
thing.
And that we look for alternatives.
okay, but we cannot address low and moderate income residents. So all this whole exercise is of no value. We cannot address it. We cannot address it.
I respectfully disagree with you, Brian. I think those are target goals and they're good goals. Even though we might not achieve them, we're still trying to do that. But the ordinance, I think, still needs to go forward and have it defined for the benefit of the community. I don't know if I mentioned this, and if I did, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I went before the planning commission out in North Logan on a house that had a garage, detached garage, had living quarters above it. And an LLC bought the home and is Airbnb-ing it, the entire home out. And one of the members of the LLC is living in the detached apartment unit above the garage. And that is allowed because their ordinance doesn't do anything to prohibit it. And it went before the appeals authority. And the appeals authority overruled the planning commission and because the ordinance, the way it was written, allowed it. And so I think we need to get an ordinance in place.
To prevent what? What are we trying to prevent?
I don't think we're trying to prevent. I think we're trying to allow.
To allow and clarify. If people want to make these choices and do these things, if people want to have an internal apartment unit and rent it, they can, whether it's long-term, short-term, Airbnb it, whatever.
I think we're trying to allow it, but we want to put parameters on it, particularly as the side yards and backyards and control it
Yes.
so that it doesn't all of a sudden become an eyesore within the single family dwelling.
Prevent deterioration of neighborhoods.
Thank you.
But that's not one of the goals. We have no.
Well, in a sense it is here. It says while maintaining the aesthetic qualities of the current Providence residents. So that's why we're saying the facades if you do a detached, the facade needs to match the house. So it isn't just a tin roof building back there, just a box, all kinds of things that would detract, that would take away from the aesthetics of the neighborhood. If you can do it and complement it, which full disclosure, as a person providing ADUs, that's what we're trying to do, is do it that it adds to the aesthetics of the neighborhood and that it looks good and keeps and actually improves the value. So maybe we're trying to complicate. We got to keep it simple. Maybe you guys all understand it, but I don't. So that's why to me, it's got to be real simple. I like it. We just have to figure out, yes, we want to allow these But we want to have, it's got to be owner occupied, because what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is the whole thing just becomes rental. You got 20 people living there inside the house, inside the basement. We only allow one detached ADU. And so, you know, we got to make sure there's parking, adequate parking. Because at certain points of the year in Providence, there's no street parking, so where are they gonna park and how are they gonna do it? We also have to, we wanna maintain the look, we want it to be on, and so a big way we do that is the requirement of owner occupied, either in the ADU or the IADU or the main house, that you would think that the owner will work to, number one, maintain the property, and number two, make sure that the individual renters are following the rules, you know, that aren't playing loud music, that aren't just, you know, causing a lot of problems in the neighborhood. That's not good for them. They live there. So you're relying kind of on that, just like we rely on individuals. I don't know that we want to promote it. Let's all start turning each other in for different things, because then it's just a bloodbath. And but I don't want to get those calls, but maybe we can nominate Shelley. She's not here. But anyway, that keep it simple, give people these options, but do it in a controlled thing, because that's the last thing anybody wants, is that we've made a mess of something that was intended to be a benefit. And just like the state has stepped in and said, oh, everybody's going to do this. They didn't go as far as they could have, and they didn't go as far as they were being asked to. But this past year, just January, they did go that far, and they are going to go farther. If people don't, the 5 options, the strategies we had to come up with, if cities don't make progress, they will step in and say, we're taking that over. We're going to decide what ordinances and code and things will be allowed and how they'll be done. So we're better to protect ourselves. So
Can I make,
absolutely.
so I like the concept that it has to have an owner in the primary or in the ADU. I think that's an absolute asset. I didn't like the fact that there was not a parking limitation in there, and I don't know what to suggest as to that, but I think there has to be adequate parking if they're gonna have an ADU for the number of you know,
We just use the same code that's used on the primary residence. There's parking required on primary residence, right? Why don't we just use the same one? If there's 2 residences, they're gonna have twice as much, or a percentage or whatever. But parking, I think we all agree on that. We need
well,
parking.
there's no parking requirement in the current one that I could see.
Right, but I think it's, Bob,
Didn't Bob?
Yeah, I
let's put
told
one in
I
there.
want-
It's gonna come up for discussion.
yeah,
I
it's
think we're all
gonna come up if
agree.
we ever get to it.
Well, those are my high points.
Right.
You know, for 10 cents worth of Joe.
And so with those couple of things, what are the other key priorities? Thank you for coming in. The other thing is, do we have people get licensed?
Yeah, why is there an exception for? Why is there an exception for the dwellings, the accessory dwellings, whether they're internal or, why do we give them a pass on a business license?
We don't require anybody that rents their home to get a business license.
And I'm saying, why? We're gonna look at this
They
code.
Logan, I own a rental in Logan, and it's a landlord,
license.
whatever, it's a license for $50 a year, or whatever it is.
We just have not.
Yeah.
We can add that to our business licenses, but we have not done that unless they are a property manager. And then they're using their home as their business office to manage properties. Then we have them get a business license. But if it's just if it's somebody that owns a home and their property management firm is out of Logan and they rent the home, we don't make the homeowner get a business license because
Yeah,
the property manager is
Right.
doing it.
So I guess we don't need to do that, especially if it's owner occupied, one or the other, they're renting it. They don't need to get a business license.
Well, we can change that, but up to
But I
this
don't-
point, we
yeah,
I
have.
think,
Well,
I think
if we do-
they're making a profit. That dictates, that comes along with the word business. They're making a profit, great, get them. They're in business.
That's
Let's
one
get a
part of the
license.
thing is, will that help bring out that anybody who has a rental, whether it's internal or external?
Now,
at their
there are
home?
certain businesses, even though they're making a profit, we cannot require them to get a business license. That's state code. If they make no, oh shoot, I'm drawing a blank. If there's no impact, I can't remember the
We
word.
can't charge for business.
Right.
license. Even if we required one, we can't charge for it.
Yeah.
We can't charge a fee. We can't collect anything for ones that don't make an impact, like if they're a home business, but they don't see clients or, there are certain things and they have kind of a list, but yeah.
So certain
We
businesses don't,
We could require the business license, but we
for
can't
certain ones.
charge for certain ones.
Can't charge.
Now, if that business person comes to us and says, I want a business license
Yeah,
because I'm going to be, I need a sales ID or whatever, then we can charge them to do the
Yeah.
paperwork, but we can't charge them unless they come in and specifically request that they.
well, what do we think of the landlord license? If they're renting,
We'll have to
Something.
look at state code, because state code has changed some.
Yeah.
Joe, do you know what they've changed on state code?
No, I don't, but.
I haven't looked at it. I haven't paid attention to it since we don't have it in, but I
It
will.
strikes me that that's not a land use issue, that's a business license
Yeah.
issue, which is.
That's out of
We're
your-
over
that's out of your
land use.
purview.
We're making recommendations for land use ordinance.
my only thought about
Mr.
that
Chairman,
is it would, yes, sir.
May I be excused? I
Absolutely.
apologize, but I've got a hearing
No problem.
tomorrow that I've got.
Is that a
Thank
motion
you.
to adjourn?
No,
No, but we're getting close.
no, but I would make a suggestion that we leave the 2-minute comments to 2 minutes.
Yeah, but my feeling is you gotta let people talk.
I understand.
That's the last thing I want is people saying they didn't give me a chance. So, thank you, Joe. Okay, my thing about it is if we can use that as a way for people coming out and identifying that they're renting a portion of their home or some part. It doesn't mean that they will do it, but I don't know. What do you think,
The
Scarlett?
more that people think, the more hoops that people have to go through, the more that people think you're going to charge them to do something, or if it's gonna increase their property taxes, those kind of things, the less likely they are to be willing to follow the rules and let you know what they're doing.
It's a control issue.
And
Quality control.
not that, I mean, if we need to and we want to, we certainly should do it, if we want to regulate. But honestly, our biggest goal is just to get people to tell us they've got them, so we can report to the state that we are doing what we need to do, and here's our proof. We've got people doing this. The thing of it is, we can say that the people don't want this kind of stuff, and yet people will come in all the time and they'll tell me, well, I know 5 people
Yeah,
down the street
there's a
that
lot
are
of
doing
people
this
doing
very
it.
thing.
Yeah.
And so the people, they may not want it. They may not want somebody else to do it, but they want to do it.
Yeah.
And so we've got to figure out a way that protects the overall good nature of the city and still allows people to utilize their property
Right?
and meets state code and is not so onerous that people won't let us know that they're doing it. The whole goal really is to try and figure out how to get people to let us know what they're really doing, so we can just say that we're following the rules.
So, and if they're supposed to collect sales tax and they don't, that's not on us.
No,
It's on themselves. And if that becomes an issue, then that's something they were personally responsible for. I guess
Just say that we're not interested in tax base of the city.
we don't get any of the sales tax, do we?
we do,
Well, then we've got to,
but if they. For us to find out that their reporting is a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
And so we rely a lot on the state to let us know who's
Yeah.
reporting and who's not. But the state doesn't know to report if they don't know that somebody's doing the business, so.
Yeah, well, I think we put Shelley in charge of that too. Okay.
Can I make a modification to this, this statement here on the first one, it's, 1B. That paragraph there, if we just insert at the end of that sentence and do not pay rent, then that would make it so that it's not an ADU or an IADU.
So we're saying the occupants or the bona fide property owner as shown on the taxes. So,
So what I'm saying here is that it will not constitute an IADU if A, it's not operated as a rental, or B, that the occupants are family members and do not pay rent.
okay,
Okay, so I just
So-
added the do not pay rent. If they're paying rent, then it would be an ADU.
How about if we just said living as a single family unit?
yeah, I think just, we gotta simplify.
Because if we
Well,
say
that's
living as
my
a
thing.
single
Who
family
knows what a
unit,
single family unit is? It means they have to go look up someplace else in the code where it defines single family unit. If somebody's looking at this and says, well, what does that mean? Let's just say what it means. If it's any of these guys that they're not paying rent, then it's not an ADU. If they are paying rent, then it is.
And if they're paying rent,
well, if they're
It's
not
a business.
collecting rent, they shouldn't, we wouldn't have to get a business license because they're not
Yeah,
making any
exactly.
income.
Yeah,
Right, and so, and then,
so every ADU should be taxed like a business. I mean, they should require a business license.
every ADU, internal or external,
Yeah,
either one of them, you're saying should require a business license.
landlord,
and with that addition to the,
Okay. Okay, Scarlett, are you all right with that?
Well, that's a different code, but yeah, I've got a note to change the business
Okay.
license code.
Okay,
We gotta stick to the land use code on this one, but I do have the business license notation.
but we can refer to the business license here, can't we? Or, I mean, somehow we can tie it to what you just said, Bob, ties it to the business license. So, you're talking about the occupants are not paying rent. So it's not an ADU.
their family members or part of your company, whatever.
Okay, so how do we, what code, where is the code that ties the ADUs to a business license?
There isn't.
The business license code
Okay,
in chapter in Title 3 would say, one of the items you have to get a business license for is a landlord.
then we need to refer to that. How do we refer to it if it's not existent? Chicken and egg
well,
thing.
it is existing.
Well,
We just have to add that
But we
piece
just
in.
have to add
We add that
that
piece in on the business.
in, because we're
license.
changing the ordinance. The ordinance,
Okay, so now we're doing two,
we're doing an
we're
ordinance
doing
review.
two reviews now.
Well,
Business license and then somebody's added a third one.
we haven't started the business license one yet, but
Well, we don't do business license. That's.
no, that's
we
not a
don't.
land use thing.
Yeah.
It's
That's
not
a
land use
regulate,
thing,
that's
so.
a city regulation thing.
that's these guys. That's their problem. You're good. at it.
Well. So what have we accomplished so far? Have we defined an internal ADU? What they can do? That it needs to be owner occupied. Right? That's pretty
Yeah.
much it. That's
Right,
pretty much what we're looking for. Has to be owner occupied, one of the 2 units. Anything else that we need to address there in that definition?
Are we including my comments or not?
The IADU, the building is not used as an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. The building, I don't think we need that. Do you? Because we're saying what an internal IADU.
So
An internal
my
IA
concern
Yeah.
is that I have a basement. It
Yeah.
meets all the requirements of an ADU. But I want to make sure that it's clear that if I'm not operating it as an ADU.
So say
but
that
it's-
so
it's
you're
not an
saying,
ADU.
so what it should say is the building is not used as an IADU.
How about if
Well,
we say
it's
the
not-
area is
I'm
not
not renting
used as a separate dwelling unit?
as a, you're
Well, it
not
could
charging
be.
rent.
But you're not charging rent,
So-
that's the key.
Yeah,
So let me go back, Bob. What part of the code do you not want to follow if you have an if you have an internal AD, but you're not utilizing it? What,
What part of the,
Yeah,
what makes me nervous?
yeah.
Okay, what
makes
makes
you
me nervous is the day that I decide, oh man, I could just rent the basement, close the door, go down to the county and say, hey, I wanna have an affidavit that says I'm gonna live in this place, I'm gonna rent this as an ADU,
Okay.
my basement. And so the code currently says that you have to let the county know and do your affidavit within 12 months of accepting this new code. Okay,
Okay,
or, I mean, it's an illegal ADU.
No,
So-
only if you're gonna use it as an
Well, but
ADU.
it doesn't say that.
Okay,
It says it's an
well,
illegal ADU, and if you go down and submit paperwork that says do your affidavit, then you are now liable for penalty under the code that says you've done a Class B misdemeanor. And, because I've had this ADU for 5 years and I haven't used it, haven't rented it, but it's been an ADU by definition, because it's got a separate entrance, it's got all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's my concern.
So you go down, you register,
yeah.
And then I get a penalty, I get $1,000 fine and a possible jail sentence.
Yeah.
For saying I want to rent my basement now. That's my concern, that's why I want to clarify that a property owner isn't gonna be penalized.
rather than define it there, then what about defining it as part of the penalty that self-reporting or something in that side of it, rather than in the definition and exempting it and complicating it on the front end? Why not on the other? That's why I'm asking where you're at.
That's my concern is that I don't want to be in trouble if I ever want to use it as an ADU or having it already.
And the other house. So.
Yeah, I'm used to penalties being if the government finds you in violation,
Hold on.
then
I
the
just was
penalty
curious
applies.
when I
If
saw
you
that.
correct and you
I
identify
just was curious.
the difference in report,
No, they lived there.
then that's usually
That's what
not
they used to
a
do, the other-
penalty. The IRS works that way. A lot of things work that way, that if it's self-reported, like say you're speeding down the road. You speed down the road and go whatever you go, as long as you correct it before the officer corrects you, then you don't get a fine. Right? You're not fined by going excess of the speed unless the government corrects you, right? If we find you and correct you,
Ranch and.
then the penalty is applicable, but if
It's
on-
like the whole place.
I mean, I don't know whether that's written.
Anyway.
Well,
I don't know how that, I mean, we could certainly
Well,
write
so-
something, but,
Well, it says that here, basically.
okay.
in the blue, right, in Bob's suggestions.
Well, no.
Well,
but
no, so-
Down here on the requesting legalization of an existing.
Right, exactly. That's where I got that from, is requesting legalization of an illegal
Tell me the
ADU.
code one that you're at, so.
So number B, Ryan, on page 4. Part of the reason why that went in there like that is because we wanted, once the code went into place,
You want to give
we
people
wanted to
12
give
months?
people the 12 months.
Right, so,
And so theoretically, this code has been in place longer than 12 months.
that's why I said that needs to disappear.
Yeah,
but it's still, if I want owners of an illegal ADU shall be guilty, okay,
Only if you're,
well,
But any existing illegal,
so the
not be
definition of an
subject to-
ADU. Okay, the definition of an ADU is a separate dwelling, which is self-contained dwelling unit located within a single-family dwelling unit. But has a separate entrance and is a separate housekeeping unit and can be isolated from the original dwelling. Okay, and
And-
maintains a complete,
And,
and has
it requires a
a bathroom and a kitchen.
yeah, but just say, and they collect rent or whatever.
It doesn't say that.
I know, but I'd say add it.
Well,
Let's just add that.
but you would think that's why I said that you're renting it. That you define it. It's an ADU if you rent it. It's not an ADU if you don't. So if I close my door upstairs and put a lock on there,
And I think that's fine.
then I'm not renting it to anybody.
Let me ask you, what if
Mice.
we remove the within 12 months of the adoption of these regulations? What if it was just an existing illegal ADU will not be subject to an enforcement action if the applicant to legalize the ADU is submitted? So if the applicant submits it,
Submits it upon submission preparatory to using it as an ADU is not going to constitute a violation for which I'll be punished.
I mean, I think we want people to register, right?
right?
Honestly, with the state and the requirements, I'd rather you register and have no penalties, but register. And whatever you did before, I don't know that I care as long as you've now become compliant with the
Yeah.
code, right?
Right.
I don't know, I don't
Well,
want to penalize you for the past,
so I'm not using it as an ADU. I'm not renting it. I don't have any plans to rent it.
but
So,
from the city side,
if
I
it's
want to count that
available-
on the list of available units.
Available, I mean, it's built and could be used for that.
Because what we don't want is we don't want another unit, another house built to house those kids that you want to come in. We don't want another house built for them. And have your ADU. We don't want to build it twice, right? I mean, that's what I worry will happen with the push from the state is they have a goal, or they have an idea of how many units have to be done because they're counting that. And they're
Yeah.
gonna say, hey, we gotta build a unit for that person that's gonna come
For
and
those
spend.
students that are gonna be
Yeah,
coming.
so we've gotta build a unit for them, and they're not gonna live in that unit, they're gonna live in your basement.
Nobody's gonna live.
Let me make a
Right now.
suggestion. How about if we say, instead of legalizing, because we want to know about your ADU, so we can count it, like Ryan's saying. But how about if we say penalty for use of of an illegal ADU or something like that? Because this isn't, we don't want to penalize you for coming to us and telling us, hey, I've got this unit and I'm gonna use it for an ADU. We don't want to penalize that, but if you're not going to tell us and we can't count it and you're still gonna rent it out, then we want to penalize you for that.
But I'm not gonna rent it, so.
Well, then you shouldn't be penalized if you're not gonna rent it. You shouldn't penalize it if you record it and don't rent it. But if we're going to, if the push is to build enough units for all of those residents, if we permit and build a house for the tenants that may eventually live in your basement instead, then we've done a disservice to the public because we have
We've
too much
overbuilt.
housing, yeah. And that's the penalty, right? That's the
risk.
that's the risk
small
for the
risk,
city.
right?
What's that?
It's pretty small risk.
Oh, were you here
Overbuilt.
in 2009 or
It's
2018?
significant risk.
That's a significant
We're
risk.
overbuilt.
Yes.
Absolutely.
City of Sacramento went in within the last year and deemed all of single-family traditional housing in downtown Sacramento to allow fourplexes on every one of those. And I think that's where this would happen. And because it's just creeps along, it's like, okay, so can we have duplexes? Okay, so now these are, what we're talking about tonight has been kind of duplexes. Next thing you know, all of a sudden there's fourplexes. And so everybody sells their property, they're leveling the whole downtown. And that's not what our goal is planning and zoning.
But there was a housing bust, and maybe it wasn't up here, but in Vegas and St. George in the 2008, 2009 timeframe, that's exactly what happened, is they overbuilt in expectation that the population was gonna double, because people were buying houses before they sold their houses, and I mean, yeah, the sub-mortgage market applied to that, but ultimately, when we're looking at a doubling of population, the press is, the push is that we build over 10,000 units. And if we count up our permitted units and our number of units, we're saying, well, where are all those gonna people live? That's what's pushing all the high density housing in the county. And if they're gonna live in your basement and they're not gonna live in a high-rise apartment, yeah, we're building high-rise apartments to house all of those people.
That we don't need to, because they're already living in your basement apartment.
There's a lot of that.
That is a severe risk, Bob. I worry about that all the time. There will be overbuilt, and we'll permit so many units that will over permit units when realistically there is housing stock for some of that. And now we'll have a bubble.
And that went on in Salt Lake and here for how many decades? You know, my brother moved into a place in 82, Salt Lake. The down payment was him painting the inside of the house. The stock was there was way too much stock. Will it come again? Yeah, it could come again. Should we try to control it?
I don't know, but at some point, the more information we know, the better we can. I mean, obviously, we don't want a lot of high density housing. The public doesn't want a lot of high density housing that's unneeded. And I think we clearly gotta admit that.
Well, here's the other thing. At the Utah League of Cities and Towns annual conference just a month ago, something like that, the big push, their number one keynote speaker, all of that, going all across country, all those things, was the idea of building a large house, what looked like a large house, but was actually for multiple units. And that you go in, everybody goes in the front door, and then it filters out to everything. And so, I mean, that's what they're, you know.
That's a long way from what we've been commissioned to do.
And so if we can bring out all these units that we have, identify them, whether they're being used or not, it helps us to show we have these internal ADUs, and people are also going with external ADUs, that we have some of that going. We have these units, they can be counted. That's the biggest thing. We need to start showing the count, and that we're not only looking at what has been built and how it's done, but also to some of the new stuff. But otherwise, I mean, that was a huge push, that this is what builders want, this is how you're gonna do it, because nobody wants to see this fourplex or this two-story fourplex. What they want to see is this big, beautiful house, but you go inside and there's 12 different units in there.
And at that point, you're having your house, you can split it one way, but what does it take to split it another, and maybe a third and a fourth? And
Well, if I rent my basement, can I still have an external ADU?
We need
That's
to
a
talk
good
about
question
that.
about this one.
That's one of the questions.
it's a good question for them.
So,
Can you?
So-
Can I interrupt?
Hold on.
Yeah.
The ADU, we just need to, the sooner we get this done, the better, because we really do have people that are trying to meet the ADU code, and our code is not allowing them to do some of what would make it better for them to do. But the subdivision code, we have to have this to the city council by January, because they have to have it approved in January. We have to have the subdivision code in place by February 1st, 2024. So
Says the state, right?
so says the state. Yeah, that's right in the code. It's-
Oh, that's fine, but we go one speed here, and I'm sorry if we can't keep up with the state. I'm sorry, that's all I can say. I can see this code that we're working on tonight, taking a number of evenings to get through, if we decide to go through with it.
Well,
And then right behind it, we've got this subdivision code. And then we've got the business code, and we don't even get.
what
to
I'm
approach.
telling you, Brian, is we need to change priorities. This code is not on a timeline by the state,
But the subdivision is.
but the subdivision is.
And we got,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Let me ask this question. With the idea that our meetings, everything has to be public and those kind of things, can we do something where what I'd like to do is get this resolved for those who are trying to do something and that. But what I'm looking at is, can we streamline it down and add in a few things of what we've discussed here? What are the major points? Get in and discuss it and review that again at our next meeting to see if we can all agree and say, this may not be everything, but this will help us move forward, and go ahead and plan to start on the subdivision stuff at the next meeting as well.
So can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
You can vote.
You're a voting guy now. Well, you were a
Can we
voting guy
vote
the
on
whole
something
time.
then while I'm here?
Sorry, not tonight.
Make a motion. That's amazing. We got a lot of people agree.
I'm wondering if we've had a lot of discussion. Scarlett understands all this very well. And she's got Bob's notes and so forth. And like you're saying, I'm just thinking, as I've been sitting here, can you, before the next meeting, just kind of put this together and just have a document, and then we go over that document?
We
I
kind
can
of
do
had that
that.
with all your red line.
Right, but just do it. And so anyway, that's my thought, that instead of us just sitting here going in circles, talking about all this, the things are written down. Unless somebody sees something that really bothers them about what's been written, I say, let's have Scarlett write, put something together, and then we can review that and maybe start whittling it down.
I would agree with that, except Bob took the initiative to do the comments in the code himself. And so they were printed and we had to receive them. I made
Questions?
Yeah.
I made questions at the end.
Right.
Okay, then I've gone through this whole thing and every page is full of issues that need to be addressed. And we at least need to talk about them.
Well,
Design requirements.
Here we go then.
And so I'm saying, how do we address both sides of that? Because they've got a ton of information that I'd like to include and exclude from the code.
Well, then here's where I think we are. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was gonna make another thought. We have on some others that are detailed, taken a small non-quorum group and put that as a subgroup and said, okay, Brian, Bob, let's have you two meet with Scarlett and I and hammer out some of the deepest of detail and be able to flush that out between, and I don't mean to pick order to chair, I just picked the names because they're
Yeah.
local.
We're passionate.
Yeah, and be able to vet some of that out in a working session. That is a, maybe in a detail, and we can get down to the weeds in some of those. It's a lot harder to do that in a public meeting,
Right.
all of us. And then it could come as, Bob, Hinkie, kind of addressed it as that comes back from a subcommittee, then it does exactly what it is. But in this discussion, to have Scarlett challenged to address all of yours is an impossible challenge of,
Okay.
I mean, you've been
But we don't-
all over the board and I could be, I tried to keep up quite a bit, but there's some that I mean, she's great. But that might be that is also another part, but you can't do it as a group offline. But we could take a subgroup that isn't a quorum and maybe do something that way. I mean, that's
So we could have
another
two.
possibility.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. Because the alternative is that we table this for an indefinite period to move on to the subdivision work that has to be done. I'd rather not see that happen. So I think if the group is in agreement on it, and if you'd be willing, I'm sure you would, and Brian, to meet with Scarlett, my main priorities are owner occupied. One of the units has to be, I don't like any time restrictions. I want people to be able to use it how they would like to. Those are just things that are important to me. And I think if you guys can do that, and we could get a draft of it, maybe that's even something that maybe once after that meeting takes place, if things can be put out to us, that we could say, hey, here's where we're at, that everybody can look at that.
Put it As a draft on
Yeah.
another future agenda.
Yeah, and then,
Another one is if you have a member of the public that might be interested, you could pull them in. We've done that before. So that's another possibility if there's somebody out there that you think, oh, well, and you don't have to pick
Yeah,
that. I'm just opening up.
yeah,
that
that
we
there's
may
that
be able to-
option.
to pull
I think,
something.
I think if we hammer it out more, and then if we can get it pretty close, and then maybe just encourage public to attend and ask stuff, or do you think it's better just get one person? Because we'll probably get a ton of different things. I think we need to get started on the subdivision stuff, but if we could take some of our time at the next meeting to say, yeah, this looks good. This addresses the key critical things that people that have existing stuff, to make sure everybody's covered there, allow people to move forward. I know there's a couple of things that we've talked about that has come up where some people would like to do something, but the way the restrictions are or requirements are, and that could be adjusted, because those are real simple things, but they make a big difference, you know, and, Bob, how do you feel about that?
It may take more than 2 weeks for them to put that together, so I don't know if the next meeting is gonna be the right time, but yes, I agree with that 100%.
What do you think, Scarlett? And yeah, that may be just your guys' call. If we get in and it's like, there's 40 issues here that are,
And we need
We have to
time
live
to
with
be
it.
able to read it before the meeting, so.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think we need to, like I said, we don't need to, this ADU one, and it kind of grew because
yeah,
we were just going to make a couple of
Right.
changes, but then you wanted a little bit more change.
Right.
Which is
We read
fine.
the code, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a big darn deal.
Well,
Okay.
one thing though, I think you have to remember, whether you like what the state has done or not, we are obligated to follow the state code.
Yeah.
We are, that's bottom line, we have to follow the state code.
And
We-
we've lost we've lost our, you say the word, serenity,
independence.
our ability to self-govern.
Okay, but it's too late.
Well, you're
Think about who you
gonna,
vote for then.
you're gonna go and there, if we don't comply, that's the thing, we have the opportunity now to comply and
And add some,
design and add to keep it the way we want and have a say in it. If we don't do anything, we're not going to have a say. And then, you know, there's individuals out there that have said, well, they're gonna charge us $100 a day, so what, that's nothing. Well, it'll just get worse and worse and worse, and then they'll just take it away. So I think we need to move forward, do what we can as best we can. So if you guys are okay, let's move forward with that. And then let's start on the subdivision stuff at our next meeting. And maybe get a review of the ADU stuff or see where we're at with it, that kind of thing like that.
Can we get a Word document of the subdivision stuff, so we can just do the same kind of comments?
yeah,
We're talking about an online Word document or?
no, it cannot be,
It can't be,
it can't be a Google Doc.
Why not?
because that's a public meeting.
Yeah,
No, I'm talking about a private doc, not a public doc.
if you're sharing it amongst more than two,
People.
it's a public meeting.
Well, so we're gonna have this, we're gonna have a subcommittee meeting.
Yeah.
That's the same thing, just two?
No, just.
Yes.
Okay, well then let's just do. Then you have access to it, I have access to it, and you can print it off anytime you want. Or you have access to it. You're not on the planning
Yes,
Commission?
Ryan and I can, but
Yeah.
which one are you talking about? Are you because the
ADUs.
subdivision one? There's a lot in there that you're probably not going to like, but it's right out of state code, so.
So we just,
I'm not saying that you have to just carte blanche approve this,
yeah,
but
Can you,
these changes are coming right out of the code.
where it's right out of the code, would it be feasible or possible to
Yeah, I can.
highlight that in a certain way so that we know that can't be changed? So let's not even discuss it.
that should be fine.
Yeah, I can.
If there's a way to highlight it somehow and.
Make it bold and italics.
That we know that that's state code.
I'd like my color to be purple,
Okay,
not my comments, just everything in
And,
purple.
and can I make one other comment about the other item, just to wrap it up? I guess?
Subdivision? or ADU?
No, the ADU. If the real purpose of the city is wanting to find out who has it, who has ADUs, so that we can report it to the state, which I think makes total sense. And we have to be very careful about, but if you report it, you're gonna start paying money for a business license, and you could get a Class B misdemeanor and whatever, and we need to look at what is our purpose, and if we really want them to report it, maybe we just say, we send out a little note to everybody and say, a lot of people aren't happy about all our townhouses, and the state wants us to have housing or more affordable housing. And if you would please report to us, no consequences. This is the code and we've attached it, but please report so that we know, so we can report to the state. That would help our city accomplish what you probably wanted to accomplish. I don't know how you word it, but.
Well, I think you gotta word it, but I think what we're concerned about, and let's take what we're concerned about and put some dollar values to it. If we're concerned about not getting the money, it's the money that we're going for. If we last year,
I haven't talked about any kind of money on this one.
no, but last year I brought up the word extortion. Okay, because the state wanted us to come up with these, to become compliant with 5 items that had to do with housing, right? If we didn't, it was 5 or 6 or whatever, if we were not compliant, what was gonna happen to us?
There is, we have some, loss of potential, revenue. And they have, okay, if that's the fund you're talking about, and now I'm on the same page.
Okay.
I was thinking, we're not interested in the $25 at the.
No, I know,
That's
that's not gonna work.
That's not our, this is not a money generating, we have to be.
No,
compliant
no.
with the code.
It's money losing if we don't do this. It's money losing. So how much money are we gonna lose? What's the potential on the money loss?
I don't know, $350 a day for. There's a calculation. but-
there is.
Are we talking about 10,000, 100,000?
Or,
Okay, so let's take that money that we could possibly lose. Okay, and let's shift that over and give everybody that reports an ADU or an high ADU, $100, $200, whatever. This is the way they do it in tech. If you want a lead for an insurance policy, if you want to find people that want to buy home insurance, it'll cost you $100 a piece, guaranteed. Okay, that's what they do in tech. That's what they've done with tech. Okay, and so I'm saying, let's turn around and get money. If we have a chance of losing this, then let's say, okay, let's don't lose it. Let's give this money away. And then we'll get, people will cooperate with us then.
That's just the opposite of what you said earlier, and I like that a lot better.
I like where you're going with it.
I do too. That's what I'm saying. Let's think about what our real purpose is for this and make sure that our policy and our document matches what our purpose is. And I don't think it's to ding people and penalize people and get neighbors ratting on each other. So I think that's a good suggestion. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's a great start to, we want reporting first, right? Because we want to know what the true number is and secondly, we want to maintain the neighborhood that you want and love. And
Yes.
we want people to enjoy
living in Providence and, you know, it fits our general plan of, you know, so we want to put some maybe, restriction on what you have or how you use it, at some point, but if we don't know that it's there, then whatever you say, if you don't know that we have any, you can change the rules all you like, but they apply to nobody.
Right.
Yeah, and
So let's come up with an incentive for that.
I think they need to understand in very simple, brief terms why this is so important to the city and to them personally. And we'll give you $100 if you'll let us know if you have one. Whatever, but
Some kind of incentive.
that's more important, I think.
Okay.
Six pack, something.
Okay, that's all great
If
comments.
I report and just go to the county and record my affidavit. Am I gonna have people come and saying, hey, you've got a place to live, can I rent it?
I don't think so.
No, that's not gonna happen?
I can't say anything's not gonna happen. Is that a
They could
potential?
somebody could do a public records request and request Cache County disclose all affidavits reporting a second.
And they do have people mining that data. It's a
They
challenge.
could have somebody
It's a
do
challenge for the assessor.
Somebody, is it possible? Somebody could request anything that's public record.
Yeah,
Is it likely? I have no idea. I don't know how to
I
answer
can
that
watch this
question.
video and find out that I have a basement.
Okay,
And I've got a daughter coming home in a year and I know you've got a basement that's,
yeah,
so if I can't find a spot, I know where to go. I got one on my list.
Okay, so we just crossed a line that says these two might cooperate with each other. That's completely opposite of asking for business license, threatening penalties, misdemeanors. So I think we gotta go one way or another. Let's give them all a first degree felony. Or let's give them some kind of incentive to come forward.
I voted.
Okay, I voted soon.
okay.
I've gotta come up
Are you
with,
okay with
we gotta come
everything?
up with one now.
So you two will contact Scarlett to
Yeah.
decide for that study thing to get that knocked out. All of us can go to the subdivision code and start reading through everything. And like you did with the ADU stuff, anything you have marked up or whatever, you'll pass to us.
You'll highlight the stuff that's state code that we can't change.
yeah.
And will you let us have a Word document then to edit?
Let's not push it.
Yeah,
So,
you
Word
can, I
is-
can
Word
send
is
it,
fine.
I can send you my document in Word, I don't care.
everything good?
I don't have a word, so it would cost me $175. I guess they're taking their wages and spend it on that. No, really, I'm just,
Ready you and you can get some money maybe.
I don't particularly like ADUs.
Okay.
A lot of this too,
Yes.
it's taking what we have to from the state code. There's some things, and I will highlight those, but it's taking our existing code and it's kind of putting all the non-developable stuff that they need to show on a plat. It's kind of putting all of that in one section. Before it was just kind of spread out throughout our checklist, because as we added something, we just said, put it to the bottom of the code. So going through here, so while it scratches out a lot of stuff, it's really just scratching out the order. All of that stuff is actually turned around and included. It's just included in a different
order.
sequence. Then, so it won't be too difficult for me to, show you what is state code and what is existing code.
So how do we share this document? We pass it around, is that what you're saying? You create the document, you pass it to Bob makes his comments, that's what happened this time.
The subdivision one is what you're talking about.
Well, either one of them,
They all come to us.
if we're gonna review code, let's figure out. how to do it.
Share the document amongst all
No, it's,
five.
it's just, everybody gets a copy of it. I open it up, I track changes, I make my comments and give
And
them
submit it?
back to Scarlett.
Everything goes, yeah.
That's
Kind
it.
of a spoken will.
Yeah,
You can be a spoke, but it's gotta go back. As far as it can't go.
it all and present it.
But we can't
No.
cooperate.
two of you could talk together, but then if Brian and Bob Washburn talk together, then Bob Washburn couldn't call Michael and say, here's what Bob and I talked about, even though it was only two. Because if you start doing that pretty quick,
Pretty
you've done a
soon,
round
you've got-
robin and you've involved the
Public
whole,
meeting.
and then you've had a meeting without,
Without notice.
So what Bob and I've got to do is come up with a document to give to the planning commission for consideration.
Right. and-
That's what we're gonna try to do.
Scarlett.
we'll
Yes, go ahead.
organize a meeting
Right,
with staff and with you and Bob, if that's the two that you
Yeah.
want us to use
Those
for
are our
this.
two.
Yeah.
now,
And just on the ADU, we'll do that.
right, so on the open meetings. The law, I know there's the open meetings law, and this is just have to do with the members of the commission in this case? Or does it have to do with staff as well?
Staff.
Nope, Staff isn't included. in
So Bob and I can hash this out in person, hash this out. We can work through this,
We can work
Together?
with Scarlett or Brian or whoever.
and we can talk to you guys.
Yep.
Work with you guys in a formal meeting or non-formal meeting, then we can go back. We can talk about it between ourselves.
Get it all finished and
Okay, great.
present it to these guys and they'll say,
You just can't have a quorum in outside of the meeting. You can't.
Because we not recording and all that stuff, and we can just invite Tyler everywhere we go.
Well, you have to invite the public.
And you have to invite the public.
Yeah.
That's who you really have to invite, is the public.
Okay,
When you have the quorum present, you have to have the public. The public has to be able to be present. They don't have to show up, but they have to have
be
the
invited.
opportunity to be present.
And they gotta know at least 24 hours in advance what you're gonna talk about. And be able to be there.
but not if there's just two of us
Right.
cooperating together.
Okay, with
they're
that,
just studying. Yeah.
so
So
we think we have a plan for this evening. Do we need to do anything about saying that we're gonna table item number 2?
No, it's a study item.
Study, so we're okay. So all we need to do now is close our meeting. Everybody okay? Does
I
anybody?
make a motion, we close our meeting.
Quick question,
Yes.
and it's not an agenda item. Are any of you interested in going to the Cash Summit, which will be held on November first? From, I think it's 8:30 to 11. I don't remember what the flyer said, Ryan, do you?
is this gonna be in the Cache County building again?
Yes,
Okay, is it gonna be in the big room, you think, like it was before?
some of it, and some of it's gonna break
Did
out.
they figured out how to handle that big room? Because I couldn't hear last time. I mean, it was just awful.
Well, I'll make sure that that's one of the things they make sure they,
Okay,
Wednesday? Yeah,
November first.
Wednesday, yeah,
I won't be here,
I can do it.
November
Is it
1st.
first or second?
Oh, November. I don't know. I better look. at
I
my-
thought on the
It's Thursday,
invitation
I
I
can't.
saw, I thought I was gonna be able to make it, but if it's the 1st, I won't be able to.
Hold on. It's November 2nd. I'm sorry.
I thought it was the second. So
Yeah,
that's Thursday.
Yeah,
How many can
Thursday,
attend on Thursday?
Can't do it on Thursday.
You can't do it.
I can.
Okay.
we're
Brian?
talking about attendance down there?
Yeah.
I can do it.
And Bob?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll add those three on the list.
so
We can
Michael
double check with
Ryan.
Shelley too.
and Bob,
Yeah,
now that you can call and ask
I'll ask
Shelley.
Shelley if she,
Because
and I'll
that's
add
not
Joe
a-
too.
That's not a decision.
Process. Cause I think she attended last year too. And I'll check with Joe, I'll check with those two to see.
Okay,
Okay,
that's all.
all right. So we have
I'm
a,
gonna renew my motion to close the meeting.
Couldn't get it.
did we get a second?
Yeah.
Oh, already, I heard it, I didn't know where it came from. Okay, all in favor?
Bye.
Aye.